Hello everybody, this is the Anime Bro here, and welcome to another episode of Anime Discussion, a show where I talk about an anime or manga with someone else. And today I am going to be talking about Naruto with Doofy.
My name is Doofy.
Yep, right there. And if you actually want to check out his content, link will be in the description below. And also, please subscribe to my channel as always. And yeah, I guess that's it. Let's just get into this video. Alright, so I guess we'll because Naruto is well known as that, like, the second anime that everyone gets into first. I guess we'll just talk about like the history of like our experiences with Naruto before we actually get into talking about it. So, you said you've got into anime because of Naruto. Can you explain like what some of your favorite moments as like when you were a kid, when you're watching Naruto, like some things you enjoyed always?
Yeah, of course. So like I mentioned in the anime talk, Naruto is pretty much my gateway into anime and manga. It's just something I saw that came on TV Saturday night, and I loved it. So when I was to the grocery store, I saw like the Shonen Jump magazine. I picked it up, and that's kind of the genesis of my love for anime, but really with Naruto. But like, as for moments I love, interestingly, I got into the series during the original airing of like the filler arc at the end of the OG series. So who don't know, and I reckon almost everyone knows this, but the original Naruto ends with a lot of filler. There is just like this massive arc of just pure filler. They were waiting for the manga to get along so they wouldn't have to do this again. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out too good for them, it seems, but
Yeah.
And so a lot of people just skip it, you know. I think these days people don't have the same tolerance for filler, and I understand that.
Yeah.
It's not always the highest of quality stuff, but that's really where I got into Naruto with. I mean, my first experience was some of those filler episodes, and so there's two that always really stuck out to me, that I still love. Like, I rewatch these episodes frequently. I just think that they're so ridiculous that they're actually funny. And the first one is, I don't remember the exact episode, but it's when Ichiraku Ramen's daughter gets kidnapped by ninja chefs. Because they heard Ichiraku himself, I don't remember his name, I think that's his name, had developed a new ramen technique that was going to blow everyone away, and they needed it. So they kidnapped his daughter, but his hands are so sore from kneading noodles while he was trying out the new ramen that he can't participate in the battle to get her back, like the cook-off. So Choji, Naruto, and Sakura, the fucking big three, decide to fight on behalf of him, and they set the standards very high. They say you gotta feed 100 of my chefs, and they gotta be satisfied. And then it's just the most ridiculous, like, they're making ramen using jutsu. So Sakura, I think, beats the dough down with, like, you know, her cha, like her punches and shit. Naruto like uses Rasengan on it to like get more air into it. Choji uses his expansion to get his arms big so he can really stretch out the noodles. And they you know, Naruto uses shadow cones to deliver, you know, the 100 dishes, and they love it, and it's amazing. And they get their daughter back. And Ichiraku's daughter is like, she's gained noticeable weight from eating so much, but it's just ridiculous, the prospect of like these ninjas who, you know, a couple episodes before were, you know, a lot of them were almost dead. Like Choji had almost died, Neji almost died, Naruto just lost Sasuke, Shikamaru, the emotional damage upon him after, you know, the events that transpired at the end. And then there's just this filler episode where they're fucking like using their jutsu to make like noodles. So it's absurd, but it's so funny to me, and it's moments like that stick out to me. So it's weird, but it's little things like that I love about Naruto. And the other one is, I don't remember strongly, but I remember I had these Naruto guidebooks, and they would just have like little descriptions of like the episodes as well as like little articles about Naruto, placement, stuff like that. And there was one episode where like a fake Rock Lee and Mike Guy come into the village to set up a dojo. It was very weird. Like, it's just, you know, Mike Guy and Rock Lee are already kind of like the goofy characters. But then to have people come in as them that are even goofy, it was just it's so absurd, and I love it. So it's strange. You'd think that like the stand-up moments would be like Naruto versus Sasuke. You know, Naruto picks up Sasuke picks up Naruto by the clothes and said, "You don't understand. It's too late," and he throws you off, you know, the cliff. But no, it's them making ramen with their ninjutsu.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, like, the one thing I didn't like was the filler bits. I didn't really grow up with anime because I got into it during my teenage years. I grew up with like Yu-Gi-Oh and all that, but that didn't really give me a drive towards anime, like what probably Naruto did for you. And recently, when watching this show, some of the filler bits, I didn't really watch all the filler because most of the filler I remember was basically they were trying to get something that would help them find Sasuke, but then at the very end it was like, okay, but we messed it up, so we're gonna have to try it next time. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of boring. As a kid, it probably would have been funny because it was like, oh, Naruto failed because he farted, and the bug now only recognizes his farts and stuff. But as an adult now, it's like, yeah, that's funny, but I want to continue the story. So I guess Naruto itself probably, like, its comedy probably didn't age well for me. It's like, and it is pretty cool that you were talking about the fillers and not like actual moments that you remember, like actual story moments from like the actual story that you remember from a kid, because nowadays filler is looked upon as like the worst thing you can do to an anime, like dragging on something so amazing and stuff. But
it sucks though, because obviously, like, the stuff I'm describing is absurd, and I think for most people who are, approaching Naruto for the first time in their 20s or whatever, they're a little more mature. A lot of that stuff just doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like me, I would say, are probably in the situation where they grew up with Naruto, so their humor almost was shaped alongside it. So
yeah,
that plus, it is something that I've liked since I was younger, so I have this kind of overwhelming charitability towards it, where I'm able to look at Naruto, and even if there are things that people take issue with, I'm able to just mentally work it out or make sense of it in a way that doesn't create a problem for me.
Yeah.
And filler is one of those things, and I take a strong stance that I don't even think all filler are bad. I know people love to, I know we're not talking about Boruto, but I'll just make this quick point. People rag on it because it's like 48% filler, or what is the actual number? Let me just look it up really quick.
Yeah.
Boruto filler percent, but it's, quite high, apparently. If I could just see it, it's 73% filler. And what they mean by that is that, 27, I guess that's the math, is manga-only content. But this is the thing. There's this thing called anime filler, and everyone loses their mind. Oh, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Oh, anime canon is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, because it didn't come from the manga, they're so opposed to. But if they actually took the time to watch some of it, and they didn't have this preconceived conception of filler as just bad, I think they might actually like it. I think there are some really interesting filler arcs that in Boruto are actually considered canon because Kishimoto gave the check off, even if he himself didn't write it. That I think just contribute to the development of characters. Again, this isn't about Boruto, but if you just read the Boruto manga, there are just some characters that don't get enough development, and I think the anime does a good job really fleshing them out in a way that we don't get with the manga. And even in the original Naruto, while it is just straight up filler and it's not canon, I just think that there are some actually really well put together story arcs in the filler. There's this one where we get like a bit of background to one of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. He isn't one of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. When they come back in the war arc, he's not among them because, of course, this was a filler character. But again, they actually make like a pretty interesting villain in these couple of filler episodes. The drama's good, the action's good. I don't remember exactly what it was called anymore, but it was just like a good ass little filler arc. And I think just because it's filler, people are gonna be like, but it's bad. But if you kind of, again, just shake that off and you just look at it for what it is, it's actually like a pretty tight little filler arc. A little action arc, I'll say. So I think, and again, even with like Bleach, I know people hate on like the Bound arc, but like the Zanpakuto Revenge arc or whatever it's called, before Fullbring or after, I don't remember now. It's actually good. Like, it's actually like a good arc, but because it's filler and it's not what Kubo said, people are like, it is therefore bad. And I just think that's stupid. People are, I think, missing out on a lot of extra content they could possibly love because of just these silly notions that filler equals bad. And hey, it's not always good, but I think to just write it all off is a mistake.
I'm also with you, like that. Like you said, I don't believe all filler was bad. It's just what I was watching in Naruto, I was like, I just want to get to the canon bits, because to me it was like, this is not really good filler episodes. So when I I'll tell you right now, when I looked up so I was already 20 episodes into this filler stuff, and I was like, okay, when are they going to continue with the next story? I looked it up, and when they said, oh yeah, get to this episode and then you can skip the rest, I'm like, so this whole time I was watching non-canon stuff? Like, I'm alright with filler, but you know, if it's not good, I don't want 100 or something episodes on this not good filler.
The biggest issue with the filler is that it just derails, because a lot of the time Naruto's, I think, especially bad for this. It's just, you get these little sections of, like, you're in the middle of like the war arc, something cool's about to happen, you know it's about to happen because you read the manga, and they're like, oh, we're getting too close to the manga, here is like 24 episodes of flashback, and I'm like, no, even though I like some of those flashback stories, it's like when you're watching this week by week, or even if you're just watching it all, you know, it's just such a it's so dissatisfying, because I want to just see the good stuff, and then you gotta throw me a flashback about, you know, Team 7 chasing a cat around the village. You know what I mean? When Madara's here, like, slaying all of the fucking ninjas. So it's So that's the biggest issue. It messes up the pacing and the rhythm of the series. Of course, people just skip it nowadays, but back then, when it was airing weekly, not exactly an option.
Well, especially like now, like I was with I'm a One Piece guy, and I watched the anime. Yes, I am a trooper. I've suffered a lot. There is like so much, like, honestly, like the one fight that comes to mind now is the Katakuri fight. That fight happened. That fight had 21 episodes, which is now the longest fight in anime. And it's not because in the manga it was a long fight. It was because most of the time they were just like filling it with like Katakuri walking so slow that it took him like a whole episode just to tell his sister to back off because this is my fight, I don't need your help. And that was basically it. And I'm like, they could have done this in like 5 minutes, or not even that. They could have done this in like a minute and could have made this continuous fight. And also, like you said, with the flashbacks, like there was one time where they did like a whole episode, a filler episode of like when Luffy's about to turn into his snake form, which is not really much spoilers. It takes like a whole episode of a flashback before we get into the amazing fight next episode. And I watched that weekly, and I was mad because I was like, holy crap, this is not what I wanted. But anyways, enough about filler. Let's talk about Naruto.
Exactly.
All right, so
I think the two. Let me put it to you this way: I think Shippuden and the original series are very different. Because I think the original series, the pre-time skip stuff, is much more character driven. I say that because narratively, it seems to just borrow a lot of things from past battle shonen. So, you know, the original Naruto is like a very standard, typical kind of battle shonen. Like, you know, you have your tournament arc, right? You have like this kind of, when they go to find Sasuke, like it's a classic kind of rescue arc, you know? The group goes to rescue one character. One villain appears. Don't worry, one of the group will stay behind. Another villain, another group will stay behind. So like it's a lot of typical kind of stuff. It's borrowing tried and true kind of structures of battle shonen. What I think it exceeds at is it really tries to focus on the characters and use these arcs to kind of go farther with some of the characters, I guess you could say. So, and I think a lot of people, even if they don't recognize it as such, this is kind of why they have problems with Shippuden, where I think it's a little more story driven. They're looking now to Kishimoto's trying to do something more thematic. It's not just about doing classic battle shonen tropes or cliches, I guess, or structures, I guess, more generally, but more specifically, sorry, my cat just meowed and threw me off, but I think because there's more attention now to the narrative and to the themes and such, a lot of the characters, and this is people's biggest complaint of Shippuden and the post-time skip stuff, a lot of the side characters are just forgotten, like the Konoha 9 or whatever. They're all forgotten. Like, what the fuck's Shino doing in Shippuden? Like, nothing, right? What the fuck is Kiba doing in Shippuden? Like, nothing. And that's where a lot of people have issues, and that's why I think that the difference is really in whether Kishimoto's focused on characters or story. And that's also why I think that Shippuden structurally is a little more unique. You know, there's a war arc, but they're doing different things that other battle shonen at least from what I can tell, haven't done in the same way. Whereas, OG, it's a lot more, cut and paste from Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho, Hunter x Hunter, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I do kind of agree with you that the original series and Shippuden are different, but I think like with the character thing, I still think it works on like I think Shippuden still has some. It's just like it's more of like quick like. In the original series, like you got to know these characters and you got to see their struggles. Like Rock Lee can't use chakra really well, so that's why he relies on taijutsu. And Neji is angry at the man. What's that last name? I don't know. He's angry at the house because his father died for it, and it was unjust.
The Hyuga clan.
Yeah, the Hyuga clan.
The main family.
Yeah, and then you also got Sasuke, where his brother killed his entire clan, and also Naruto is an orphan. You got all these different characters that were introduced, and there was always like this main thing that drives these characters, which I really did like about the show, because it pretty much like made these characters really unique. And like when one of them died, I'm not spoiling who, it kind of hit you, because it was like you kind of saw where this was and stuff like that. And also it made you because what was interesting was it seemed like each one had their own. It made the world, I guess, more like alive, because in other shows that I've seen, it's mostly either the main three. It's mostly the main three you learn about. Like you learn about their backstory, and you see the journey that they take from like from the beginning all the way to the very end. While with Naruto, you see everybody go through this. You get to see Rock Lee become a master of taijutsu. You see Naruto become Hokage. Eventually, that's not really a spoiler, honestly. It's a shonen anime. It was going to happen eventually. You see Sasuke become even like darker than he is, and it's really cool because it shows more that these characters are actual people. They're doing their own thing. They're not just following Naruto around and helping with his goal. They have their other goals that they work forward towards, and I really do like that in this. Like in Shippuden, it's more of like.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think.
Just continue. In Shippuden, it seemed like it was more focused on the older characters. Like that's when we learned about Kakashi's past or Might Guy's past, and even like some of the villains' past. And even then, it was little bits. It wasn't like we got like whole arcs talking about Kakashi's past or Might Guy's past. It was more of like at that moment you saw the past, and it was still like, oh, that's really cool, but it wasn't like the main focus like the original series was, where it was building up every character individually and stuff like that. But
yeah, I think one thing about that is that I think I mentioned this also on the anime talk, but because the original Naruto is so character focused, there was just more for people to love. Like I think you're really keen to point out that in a lot of series, it's really only like the main three that'll get fleshed out to any extent.
Yeah.
But I think even if in the Konoha 11 or whatever, not every single character was fully developed. I think for me and a lot of other people that grew up watching Naruto, you just kind of did watch the filler. And there were a lot of filler arcs that did a lot for their pasts, which just added more to their character, even if it's not canonical.
Yeah.
But two, because of that, like it just seemed like there were so many characters to love, and this was very much reflected in my friend group. Like, my favorite was always Sasuke. It still is, but my best friend, his favorite was Gaara. I had another friend who loved Shino, another who loved Kiba, right? It's just, and another loved Rock. Like, there was literally like somebody for another one who loved Neji. Like, so for every character in like the Konoha 11, we had a friend that loved them more than the others. Someone loved Choji, okay? Somebody was like, oh, Choji's my favorite character. Someone said that, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I definitely think that amongst people who, complete the series, there is a big diversity amongst like who's your favorite character, even by the end of Shippuden. But I feel like as time kind of went on, those lists of like people's favorite characters kind of got homogenized. So, everyone's going to talk about Obito, everyone's going to talk about Pain, and they should. These are amazing characters, and why I love Naruto so much is for these characters.
Yeah.
But at least earlier on, it just it wasn't so unanimous. Like everyone just kind of had their own favorite because everything was just done I don't want to say with equal attention, but comparable attention, we might say. Whereas in Shippuden, while I think they do like a deep dive on some characters like Sasuke, of course, and Naruto, and I think they pay a special attention to, say, like the dynamics amongst characters. So I think they've really, this goes without saying, it's longer and they've had more time to think about it, but the dynamic between Sasuke and Itachi, obviously that whole character arc is fleshed out, completed, and really impactful, and I don't think that there's much else in the series that can compare other than Sasuke and Naruto's dynamic, especially leading up to their final fight, which was kind of controversial. Their final fight, like, why the hell did they have to fight? But they had to, But what do you think about that? Actually, I kind of, before I go a little too crazy, what do you think about the fact that, or do you have anything to say on the fact, like, why the hell did Naruto and Sasuke fight again in the end?
Well, to be honest, I kind of thought like it was going to happen eventually, because during the war arc, when I was looking at it, it didn't seem like they were allies. It was more of my enemy is my friend, basically. So they had a common enemy, so they were just fighting it because of they both had an enemy and they just wanted to get rid of it. And at the end, it didn't seem like they were on the level of like, hey, let's be friends again. It still seemed like mostly Sasuke. Naruto, the whole series, like, yeah, he was a simp for Sasuke. Like, honestly, if the show ended of them ending up together, I would have been like, I kind of saw it. It was there. But it didn't. So I don't think it was like a controversial thing. Like, why are they fighting? It was more of like I was like, this actually I could see happening, because they're still enemies even after they fought this big fight. Because I think I look at it in like Sasuke is, when I see it, Sasuke is kind of like, Sasuke and Naruto are the opposites. Sasuke always focused on the negative when he lost, or when he lost his family. He only saw the negative, like, I'm by myself, I have nobody, there's no way I could ever be, no one can understand who I am, no one can understand what I'm going through. While with Naruto, he saw it in a positive way, like, yeah, even though I don't have a family, I still have friends that look out for me, and he's looking at the positive note. So to me, it was like, it was more of like an end to Sasuke's character development thing, because I think Naruto just fought him to, put some sense into him, saying like, we are still friends, and even though this fight probably could have ended the world, honestly, I think it was an important character for Sasuke, because especially like when I saw the fight, and I actually saw like when they missed their arms and their arms were like right together, I was like, okay, they've come to some compromise. Like they kind of like, I think they're friends now, but it's more of like, I don't want to fight you anymore, like something like that.
Yeah. So see, I think I come at it slightly differently. I think a lot of people do. It's a really controversial battle, but I maintain, at least, that I think that they're friends at some level throughout the entire series. Even when Sasuke is like, I actively hate you, like, I'm saying I do not like you, leave me alone. Even in those moments, I feel like because Naruto is the only one with comparable experiences to him, he's the only person that he can really turn to. And so even in like these moments of spite and hatred, and I'm going to destroy the world, fuck you, Naruto, even amongst all that, I still think that there's this kind of undertone of, the reason it had to be you is because there could only be you. I don't know if that's a very satisfactory way to put it, but maybe I'll try to explain it this way. So like in the original battle, obviously Sasuke's motivation for going away was because he needed more power, so he can kill Itachi, right? That's the basic plot point. And so at their fight at the Valley of End, when he's fighting Naruto, there's this scene where he's like, you don't understand me, you don't understand my pain, like, quite literally. And he didn't, like, even though the two, and arguably Naruto might have had a worse experience overall, or might have at least been in worse condition. I think the difference is that Sasuke had to live out having the normal life and having that taken away, whereas Naruto didn't have it taken away. He was just put into the bad situation. And so Naruto doesn't understand the feeling of having something good and then having that stripped away, I think, is Sasuke's point. That's why what he means by, you don't understand my pain. Even if you could make the argument that Naruto is in a worse place overall, because he was outcast by the whole village for being the Jinchuriki, blah blah blah. And he coped with that in different ways, but he never had anything taken away from him. He was never loved by the village, then abandoned by them. Kind of thing. So that's why the dynamic is different than the first part. But they, as rivals, and that's really what they are, the whole series, rivals. They had to have the second fight when they're on a kind of even playing field. And at the end of the series, Naruto is, because he did have things taken away from him. Jiraiya was killed by Pain, right? And that is now finally Naruto can understand what Sasuke went through, and now they can actually fight on the same level. So they do, and yeah, it was beautiful, and I love that.
Yeah.
Of course, narratively, we all knew they were going to fight again. Like, it just had to. It was big too. We wanted to see it power scaling, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So it was cool. But I think it makes more sense narratively than people are willing to give it credit. A lot of people are so like, oh, why are they fighting again? Blah. I'm like, you don't.
Well, it's also like narrative.
Watch it on YouTube, bro. You didn't watch the anime.
Yeah. It's also narratively because, you know, they're the reincarnation spirits of, like, the two sons. So it's like, yeah, you know, they're always going to fight it out. So world building sense, yeah, it kind of made sense. They were reincarnations of people who hate each other. Yeah.
I don't like. I gotta say, I don't love a lot of that stuff. I think if we're gonna talk about things I dislike, that wasn't super satisfactory. Like, they always allure to the fact that they kind of inherited like the will of their ancestors. That's obviously why in part 1 Sasuke's on Madara, Naruto's on Hashirama. Like, so the idea of them just like being the spiritual successor of, like, you know, the two respective lineages, like, that was cool.
Yeah.
But then in Shippuden they're like, well, no, you actually literally are the reincarnate. And I'm like, I don't know why, but like making it more literal kind of takes away from, I guess, the figurative impact of them just being the, you know, spiritual successor of their, like, will of fire.
Yeah.
So I didn't like that, I gotta say.
Yeah. If we're talking about things I didn't like, Naruto, the character, I did not like him. I honestly, for the longest time, when I tell people like, oh, Naruto's not that good of a series, I always say that I don't like Naruto because he didn't fit my image of a ninja. He was like the total opposite. Like, it's like, first of all, he wanted to be flashy. He wanted everyone to know your name, when the whole point of a ninja is to be stealthy and be hidden. So whenever I watched it, I'm like, this guy wants to be a ninja, but he's not acting. He's acting completely opposite of what a ninja is supposed to be like. Like, when he says Hokage, I don't think he means like the strongest ninja in the world. I think he's just more of like, there's more like meaning. Like, I understood, like, he wanted it so that everyone could, because the Hokage was the most respected person, and that's what he wanted to be. He wanted to be the most respected person because of his childhood stuff. But to me, it seemed like if you wanted to be this way, I think you needed to follow the ways of, like, ninjas, because that's what the Hokages did. They followed the way of the ninjas, and eventually people, like, accept them as Hokage. But if you're just this knucklehead who's always getting into trouble, nobody would want you to be their leader, because they don't want you to represent them as their leader and stuff. So yeah, for the longest time I didn't really like Naruto. Like, I don't know when I started thinking it was okay, but to me it was like, this guy did not have an off switch on his mouth. Like, he could literally be thinking of what he was saying. Like, I don't even think that changed in Shippuden either. That was still like a thing that happened. Like, he was a little bit more mature, but it wasn't by much. I think
that the development by Shippuden was, I think, a little more significant than that. I mean, like, you know, he's like, by temperament, he is a bit of a, I don't want to say ditzy, but like, you know, he's a bit of a loudmouth, kind of obnoxious character. Just by temperament, I do think that kind of becomes more or less of an issue with time, because just, you know, the culmination of his experiences in Shippuden, he kind of matures a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think, just to go back to a few points you made, the point about Naruto not really being a ninja, I think a lot of people actually, I don't know if a lot of people, but I know Archangel Monk has mentioned it before. One issue with Naruto is that, like, it's supposed to be a ninja series, but it doesn't really feel like they're ninjas.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair, but I don't think that they have to be held to the same standards of what we think of as ninjas. I think that it's a convenient heuristic tool to use in the beginning, so I think that they use the image of a ninja to kind of get this image in the reader's mind initially, so that, because obviously in the first chapter, for instance, or the one shot that you're selling to Shueisha, you can't do this massive world building and develop all these things in a single chapter, so you have to just rely on notions we have in our world. So yeah, okay, ninja, and they are ninjas, they do espionage stuff, they go on missions, like they loosely fit what a ninja should be.
Yeah.
But obviously the Naruto's idea of a shinobi is much different than, I guess, our typical idea of ninjas. For one, we don't have like these big ninja academies. It's not a ninja world in real life. So
yeah.
The way that it's almost counter to what being a ninja is, since it's supposed to be more secretive, and then we have this world where, like, the Hidden Leaf Village is like on the map. So it seems counterintuitive to our actual idea of what a ninja is, but I don't think that's an issue. It creates its own identity of what a ninja is in the show.
Yeah.
It has to start from somewhere, and it uses our common notion of it. But I don't think that's an issue at all. But as for Naruto himself, the issue of he wants to be Hokage, but not doing the proper things to become a Hokage.
Yeah.
I can see why that might be an issue. But I think the way I've always looked at it is, as you mentioned, his motivation for being the Hokage simply is, like, I just want to fit in. I want people to look up to me. I want people to, like, accept me. And Hokage is, like, the culmination of all those things that he wants in the highest order. And, of course he would want that.
Yeah.
Now, not taking the right steps, now that's a slightly more complicated issue. He's, first of all, he's a kid who also has no parents to, like, model his life after. He doesn't really have someone to, like, model his behavior after.
Yeah.
And so, that taken into consideration, of course he's not going to be this rational agent that is carefully plotting out every move to become Hokage. He's just going to, like, act impulsively, and because those impulses haven't been shaped, at home, because he's had no, again, role model to really do that with.
Yeah.
He's kind of a loose cannon, and I think that makes a little more sense out of his actions. Sorry, my cat is just the most annoying creature of all time today. But I guess that would be, I think it would be more ridiculous to assume. I think it would have been worse and more ridiculous if Naruto actually did take the proper steps initially to become Hokage, because that would have just, if he had done all those steps, he wouldn't have to be Hokage in the first place, because he would be accepted by other people. Not entirely, of course. He's still Jinchuriki, and he'd be shunned for that, I think, regardless. Yeah. But if he at least behaved socially better, like the students didn't really know he was the Jinchuriki. He could have been accepted by those, and I think with that acceptance, he wouldn't have this whole, I don't know, goofy guy, outcast kind of thing about him. Yeah, a lot of that would have been mitigated, and then there would be no need to be the Hokage, I think, from his perspective. But I think that's just my kind of take on all that.
Yeah. Well, I got kind of like, when I compare, like, this, it seemed, because the typical shonen protagonist is always Naruto or like Luffy in those shows, where it's just a guy who just goes around doing his own thing, doesn't really think about it. And I understand he's a kid and all, but at some point, like, it wasn't like, even though he had no role model, at least he had like a school or some learning education. Like, if it would have been totally different if he didn't go to the school, and actually he did have a role model, his teacher, wasn't it?
Well, role models, I think, a little strong.
Well, it was like he because I remember, like, when it came to a father figure, he was the most person, because he was like, even though he saw the Jinchuriki in him, he still treated him like a kid. And
yes, Yorko was good for that, but he didn't have, like, an active role in Naruto's, like, home life, for instance. It was just more so, like, up until the whole event with, like, Mizuki, Iruko's just kind of, I guess, passive in Naruto's life. Like, he was hard on him because Naruto's, a dumb kid in class, and, like, he was a troublemaker, but, like, he treated him like he would have treated any kid, regardless of him being the Jinchuriki. So that is right, and that is good, and I don't want to downplay Iruko's role in Naruto's life, but it was not sufficient, I think, for the significant developmental years of Naruto's life. He wasn't there, simply. So
yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it's just, to me, I don't really like idiots, honestly, in anime. I get that. There's sometimes where it's okay, but when it came to Naruto, it wasn't for, I didn't really like it.
Yeah, so, like, I get that. It's the same thing now with, like, again, when people talk about new gen series, like the two that I always have in mind are like JJK and Boruto.
Mm.
And it's difficult to compare those two for a million reasons, but one of the big things is that even though like what I love about Boruto is the old cast essentially.
Yeah.
Like Boruto as a protagonist, it feels weird to compare him to someone like Itadori, just because like they feel completely different.
Yeah.
Itadori is like a little older, a little more mature. I mean, he's obviously got that goofiness about him, that aloofness characteristic of a battle shonen protag, but
Yeah.
it's different. And I think actually it is similar to what we had back like in those days with like Ichigo versus Naruto.
Yeah.
Because Ichigo was like just more mature, and so if that's what you wanted, you didn't want that kind of the idiot loudmouth protag. That's what you watch. So, but yeah, no, I understand. Like, I totally just get not liking the more goofy, approach of Naruto. I also don't like Luffy for those same reasons.
Well, with Luffy's thing, I kind of put it like just to quickly defend Luffy, even though this is not One Piece.
I had to put my jab in there.
Yeah. So
I know you're a One Piece fan.
Yeah, I'm a One Piece fan. So with Luffy, I was alright with it because he wanted to become a pirate. With a pirate, there's no real code. Like the pirate code is whatever you make up. So like if he wanted to be an idiot, it was like, well, there was no code saying he couldn't be an idiot. So I guess like to compare it to it, in Luffy's case, he wanted to become a pirate because it meant freedom. He just wants to be free because in the Ocean Blue, there's no laws except what the Navy says. But to a pirate, it's like, screw those laws. I can do whatever I want. So being the Pirate King is not like he doesn't want this riches because that's what a pirate wants. To him, a pirate means freedom. To be the Pirate King means you're the most free person in the world. So when he does knucklehead stuff, it's not because he's not thinking, it's just that he doesn't care. He wants to be free, so why should he follow these rules that people put out to him? He's just going to do whatever he wants because that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Yeah, the whole profession, we might say, or the occupation of being a pirate is like explicitly defined by going like against the rules or doing what you want because, they're pirates.
Yeah.
Whereas, like in Naruto, being a shinobi, it's much more institutionalized. There's rules of conduct, and blah blah blah. So, any instance in which Naruto fails to meet those, it kind of seemed like, well, why do you want to do this big thing when you can't even do the simple things that are the prerequisite? So, again, that makes sense to me. But again, I think I've at least made sense out of Naruto's behavior to a point where it's a non-issue.
Yeah.
And with Luffy, even if it is explained, I guess I just don't like his character, so we're pretty much in the same situation.
Yeah, we're in the same situation. We wanted to defend our characters, so we got we
exactly.
We did it.
Yeah. But I think another aspect of Naruto that if we're gonna talk about what it does well, we can't forget the fights. As far as I'm concerned, there isn't another show that has fights on the same caliber as Naruto, which produces like emotionally significant fights, choreographed fights. And just stunning, just beautifully animated fights. I don't think any other series does all of those three things at the same level of Naruto.
Yeah.
Because like choreography, listen, these are the classic examples, but fucking both Naruto versus Sasuke, I mean, it's just so amazing. The hand-to-hand combat stuff, like it's beautiful. It's also why, of course, Rock Lee versus Gaara is amazing. Just any fight that has to do with taijutsu is always stunning to look at because of, well, I mean, I think that Kishimoto, obviously the animators are doing a lot of work here, but Kishimoto has a good mind for conceptualizing like different placements in a fight, like just making good use of his terrain. Where the fighters would be if they were actually fighting and they had like these super strengths or whatever. He has a good eye for like all those placements and just the actual flow of a fight. It's brilliant. It really is brilliant. There aren't many series that do it as well. I think JJK might be one. It doesn't have the same number of these amazing fights just yet, and I really want to see how season 2 is animated to say more on that. I mean, I think Akitame, I think that's his name, the mangaka, does a really good job drawing the fights. I think that they're very dynamic. He does a good job like creating the illusion of movement. Probably even better than Kishimoto in terms of pure drawing.
Yeah.
But if we're looking to the anime, like just the Naruto anime's masterclass in it, frankly, and I cannot think of another anime that does it better.
Well, I mean, like I'm gonna say Demon Slayer actually is pretty well done.
Oh, that's fair. For me, sword fights aren't as yeah, I don't know. They don't go as far for me. They don't have enough finesse because again, I just think that there's something limiting about there's certain motions only available to you if you're using sword with two hands.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're doing hand to hand, like again, you can do backflip, like land on your hands, like push yourself up, twist. Like sure, you can do similar-ish things with swords, but I don't think Demon Slayer does. I don't think it has these long, drawn-out fight sequences. They're usually pretty short. They look nice, yeah, but they don't have the same level of finesse or attention to detail with like the back and forths between the people fighting. And that's one of my big issues with Bleach, actually. I think I love Bleach, but in terms of like its fights, I think that most of them suck. There's no back and forth, it's always like big sword, big slash, other guy, blocks, does another big slash.
Yeah.
The other guy block. Like there's no real back and forth in most Bleach fights. Now they're emotionally significant and they're like they feel very grand when we have these big power-ups. But on a like choreography level, it's almost all of them suck. Like, and I love Bleach. It's one of my top 10 series. But in the manga, there's a few good ones. Ichibei versus Yuha is great. I like Yamamoto, Yuha. A lot of the stuff in the 1,000 Year Blood War arc could potentially be very great when animated. But I think the rest of Bleach doesn't. Like even Ukiura versus Ichigo, I think there's a few little cool back and forth. Same with his fight against Grimmjow. But I think those fights are more emotionally significant and more epic, just for like Ichigo going Vasto Lorde. But that's that's Bleach. I don't need to rag on other series to prop Naruto up. I think we can just look at Naruto and be like, even if you don't like Naruto, you see that the taijutsu part of Naruto versus Sasuke in the Valley of End, you're like, yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
But also, it's storytelling with his fights, right? Like it's not just simply two guys beating each other up, but like they do a lot in terms of like narrative progression through the fights. Think about like Obito versus Kakashi.
Yeah.
The one scene that really juts out to me is they're going back and forth between them presently fighting and them fighting when they were younger.
Yeah.
And there's this one scene where like Obito is kind of just like on the ground, almost defeated. But then the real life Obito like just kind of comes over him and just throws him to the ground and then like goes after Kakashi. Kind of just like a symbolic representation of Obito rejecting like his old philosophy and just kind of moving forward. He's now willing to go through Kakashi, blah blah blah, little things like that. So it's like there's this attention to detail in the fights, not only to just be visually and choreographed well, but to also do something narrative wise without having to say anything. And it's again, I don't think another anime does it as good at all, not even close.
Okay. I guess it seems we're dragging this a lot. I guess I was just gonna end on final like question somewhat. So I'll end with two questions. So the first one is since we were talking about fights, what would you say is your favorite fight?
It's again just the classic answer, Naruto versus Sasuke. It's probably a tie for both of them though. I like them both for different reasons. I think the final fight, again, it's emotionally powerful because again, Naruto finally understands Sasuke's pain, like according to Sasuke. So there's more of that. But also like it's like eye candy because the way they build up the fight, they start like they did in the original Valley of the End, kind of smaller jutsu, but just some taijutsu, and it progressively gets more intense as they increase the scope of what jutsu they're using up to like the Nine Tails and the Susanoo. But then after they kind of have this crescendo of like their biggest jutsu, it goes back to the taijutsu because again, they are exhausted, and any other ninja would have been down for the count at that point. But again, just that will to kind of see it through, they're punching each other's teeth out. There's no music playing. The shot where like it just slowly pans in as they're fighting on the water, beating the shit out of each other. It doesn't make as much sense. I don't think that matters, but like if Sasuke actually wanted to kill Naruto, he would have just used Susanoo like immediately. He wouldn't have had this hand-to-hand combat thing first. So it was very much designed to be like this kind of showcase of everything that they've learned throughout the series. I like the original one more though, because you can see it is much more driven by like Sasuke is actually more or less almost trying to kill Naruto. And so like he doesn't really hold back initially. Like he's kind of using like his dragon flame just fucking scorch Naruto. He's like, okay, that's it. Let's get out of here now. I'm going to get my power from Orochimaru. Then Naruto comes back up. He's like, okay, I'm gonna just fucking like pile drive you into the fucking earth. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Nope, I'm still good. But yeah. So I think they're good for different reasons. I'll just also note a moment that I really love in the original fight. We have Naruto and Sasuke just used Chidori and Rasengan for the first time in that fight, and they both get propelled backwards, of course. And like just Naruto just bobs out of the water. You know, Sasuke crawls out there eagerly, and Naruto's just kind of like floating lifelessly up to the top, and he just looks over to him and he's like, "Oh, you really meant it, Sasuke. Like you really mean to like kill me." And he's like kind of like crying, and that's like the turning point. That's when Naruto's like, "All right, I gotta, you know, you actually trying to kill me, so I have to actually try now." And I think that's a really moving part.
Yeah.
My second favorite fight, though, okay, just not to drag it on too long. But,
okay.
Pain versus Jiraiya. That is, oh, good lord, amazing fight. I mean, choreography, it's not as significant. There are some cool maneuvers, especially when the summoning Pain is fighting against like Gamma Ken or whatever, and then you know, Jiraiya using Sage Mode, him actually killing one of the 6 paths, finding out their secret. It's cool, but it's not as well choreographed. But I think the highlight for me is just Jiraiya's monologue as he, you know, he's falling to his death. He's like, "Oh, my life was a failure. I couldn't save my sensei. I couldn't save my friend." But then just the little glimmer of hope as he reflects upon Naruto. He's like, "I did actually do something good. I'm not a failure," and that gives him the will to just come back up. He confirms that Pain is just a bunch of people that he's already killed. So there's clearly one guy making the 6 paths that are all connected. He writes the note, and then he's killed, and he dies with a smile on his face. So just emotionally, it's one of the best parts of the series. I just love that fight. Also, Jiraiya fighting his former students. It's cool. Starts the whole dynamic with Pain and Naruto, and like I said, this was really the quintessential moment where Naruto's able to find himself, having lost something, and being able to relate with Sasuke a little more. But anyway, sorry that went on a little long. But what about you? What's your kind of favorite fight in the series?
I kind of actually have to agree with, obviously choice, this is like number one, Naruto and Sasuke, where I also agree with you with the original fight, but almost because of I'm a sucker for a guy who really likes bad ending. I like bad endings or like tragic stuff. And and to me, what really stuck out was that technically was Naruto's first loss. Like other fights, he would push through, he would win. He won that fight with Neji, even though Neji basically cut his chakra points. He won the fight with Gaara because he basically like opened his mind and said like, you can have friends. But with Sasuke, it was his first defeat, and it was like it opened his eyes to like sometimes just pushing through it doesn't really, like, you can do so much, but it really depends on the person. If like Naruto wanted him to come back, but Sasuke didn't want to go back. He wanted to go on and basically get more power, and he didn't care how he was going to get to it. And also, I also liked at the very end when Kakashi was holding his body, and he was like, he was sorry to Naruto that he didn't come there sooner. And also, especially at the very end, at the very end when they were playing that, like, nice, like, the sad song and stuff, it was like, this is an amazing fight, but this is really sad, Naruto lost. His friend is now going off and is now basically an outlaw to the village, and at some point he's gonna have to fight him again and maybe kill him. Of course, that never happened because we got Boruto and Shippuden ended. But I'm a sucker for like bad endings and whatnot. But yeah,
I think that was such a great place to kind of end the original on. Well, I mean, a little more happens, but like in every, like you said, like Naruto, even if he couldn't physically beat his opponent before, like he could at least get through to them on like a emotional level. But he just couldn't with Sasuke, as hard as he tried. Like this was just a defeat on every possible level. And again, just seeing that scene of him on the water and Sasuke looking over him, starts to rain before Sasuke walks away. It's just, it's very moving. I love that ending.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I could see why anyone would have the original over the second one.
Yeah.
Vice versa, for that matter.
Yeah. All right, and I guess I will end this anime discussion. Final question, obviously from the super fan, it probably is a yes. Would you recommend people actually give this a watch, even though the anime probably hasn't aged as well and stuff like that?
For the record, I think the anime did age pretty well. I mean, a lot of the shit in OG Naruto I think still looks good. Like Chunin exams looks fucking good.
Yeah.
I think I would. Sometimes I hesitate to recommend Naruto nowadays. I just feel like there's a different standard for battle shown. I think people want something a little darker. Not to say Naruto isn't dark. I think especially if you read the manga, there's just scenes that the anime couldn't adapt. Like with Shikamaru's in the Genjutsu, and it looked like his arms melting off. They couldn't adapt that faithfully, of course. But
yeah,
I mean, yeah, fuck it. Give Naruto a try. See what all the hubbub is about. It has a good first arc. The Land of Waves is like an excellent starting arc. It kind of gets to the action pretty quickly. Unlike something like One Piece, which takes 100 chapters to get okay.
Well, I mean, like,
sorry, I had to do my other jab.
Yeah.
But so does Bleach, for the record. I don't think Bleach gets good for fucking late into it either, to be fair. So.
Yeah. But
yeah, fuck it, give it a try.
Yeah. Me, it's kind of maybe, honestly. Out of the big three, I say this was the lowest point, but that was more of I focus when it comes to me. The main character is always the big thing. Like, am I willing to see the perspective of this guy? And for the longest time, Naruto was that guy where I was like, yeah, I think I would watch someone else because there was so many other cooler people that I thought were more interesting. But it depends, It's not a bad show. I will say this: it's not the worst show in the world. It's not a mid show. It's a good show. If you want something to watch and have the time for it, give Naruto a watch. But if you don't want to, then I'm honestly fine with it. I could take it or leave it, to be honest.
But hey, to be fair, even though you might have your issues with Naruto, the story, he's obviously the protagonist and it centers on him, but there are a lot of moments where it just doesn't,
Yeah.
Mainly in Shippuden, I will say, but the whole balancing of the narratives between Jiraiya versus Pain and then Sasuke versus Itachi and then Naruto, they do a pretty good job bouncing around those three totally separate arcs at the time. So it's not always just Naruto. So if you don't like him, still give it a chance because it's not always about him.
Okay, yeah.
Though it's obviously largely about him. So if you fucking hate him and can't stand him, you're probably not gonna love the series. But
yeah. And I guess that's
watch it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the end of this video. Thank you so much, Doofy. It's again a long video, like always, but it's always a fun.
It's been a blast.
It's really fun. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And thank you, audience, for watching. If you want to actually check out Doofy's channel, link will be in the description below, or it will be in my channel, honestly. Just look around, you'll find it. Also, before we go, congrats on 1,000. I know this is late, and I'll be releasing this even later, but at the time...
Thank you.
At the time...
I appreciate it.
Yeah. At the time, he was at 900, but... Yep. Good job. And, yeah, and also subscribe to me. Please... I would really like to get to 1,000 as well. I made it to 100, so honestly, anything is possible at this point. So, yeah. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace!